morning, everyone. Welcome back. And today I'm Jen. Today we're going to do true crime video. Excuse me. And we are going to discuss the fatal attraction murder. And this, I did not realize that that was what this case was labeled as I was looking up the um, the perpetrator, whatever you want to call it. And it was very, very interesting. So I, wanted to share this with you guys. So we're going to get started. So pull out your diamond painting kits, cross stitch, whatever you're working on, and listen and let's, get into the case. So this again was labeled the fatal attraction murder. This is about Caroline Warmus. And we're going to get into this, and we're going to start with her early life, and then we're just going to go on into the crime, the investigation, and so on. So now, she was born in born January the 8th of 1964, and she's serving a 25-year to life sentence for murder of her lover's wife. And Caroline was born in Troy, Michigan. She grew up in Birmingham, Michigan, which is an affluent suburb of Detroit. Her father was a self-made millionaire, and which his fortune that he accumulated was from the insurance business. Her parents divorced when she was 8 years old. She did eventually attend the University of Michigan, where she went through a series of unsuccessful romantic relationships. There was an element of obsessive behavior. She had a history of stalking boyfriends and hiring private detectives to determine their whereabouts. And one of her former boyfriends, Paul Lavin, obtained a restraining order against her after Caroline waged a relentless campaign to win him back. She called him and his fiancée and left messages on their answering machine. She even went so far as to contact their friends, and also wrote a lot of notes. She also falsely claimed that she was pregnant with Paul Lavin's child. She graduated with a degree in psychology. Go figure, right? I mean, really? Okay. Now, Caroline then moved to New York City. She also hired a private detective to trail a married New Jersey bartender when he lost interest in her. She also earned a master's degree in elementary education from Teachers College and Columbia University, and she landed a job in September of 1987 at Greenville Elementary in Scarsdale, New York. Now, see, this is what I have a problem with. She goes to college and gets a degree in psychology. She then turns around during all of this, while she's doing, stalking this bartender. She's getting a job. She's going to school for elementary education. Sorry, but that to me, no. Now, while she was going to college in New York, in Scarsdale, New York, she met a colleague, a mentor, and he soon became a soon-to-be lover, Paul Simon. And he was a 5th grade teacher. And his family, wife and Betty Jean, and daughter Kristen. Caroline became a role model and a big sister to Kristen, and she would buy her expensive gifts. Okay, now we're going to get into the crime. Now, This starts on January the 15th of 1989. A New York telephone operator received a call from a woman in distress, but the call was abruptly disconnected. She alerted police, but they found nothing because, as you guys know, back in 1989, so forth, the reverse, they didn't have 911 right off the bat. The reverse directory had an incorrect address. At 11:42 p.m., the body of Betty Jean Solomon was found in the family's Greenboro condominium by her husband. She had been pistol whipped and had 9 bullet wounds in her back and her legs. The investigation initially decided to focus on Paul Simon, whose alibi was that he had stopped at a local bowling alley to see some friends and then had spent the evening with Caroline at the Treetops Lounge in the Holiday Inn in Yonkers. When Caroline and additional witnesses confirmed his alibi, detectives turned their attentions elsewhere, as did Solomon, who had broken off his relationship with Caroline and had become involved with Barbara Baylor. Now, suspicions from the police shifted to Caroline Warmus when she began to relentlessly pursue Solomon, which included following him and Barbara Baylor to Puerto Rico and calling the woman's family in an effort to end the relationship. When they had gained information that Warmus had obtained a .25 caliber Beretta pistol with a silencer from the private detective that she had hired back a long time ago, shortly before the murder, Detective Richard Constantino checked calls made from Caroline Warmus's home on January the 15th. There was one call that was made at 3:02 p.m. to Ray's Sports Shop in North Plainfield, New Jersey. The store records indicated the only female to purchase a .25 caliber ammunition that day was Lisa Catati from Long Island. Now, they questioned Lisa. She denied ever being in the shop or buying the ammunition. After investigating further, they determined that Catati's driver license had been lost or stolen while she was employed at a summer job. And one of her co-workers on that summer job was Caroline Warmus. Police then had enough evidence to make an arrest. Caroline was indicted on the charge of second-degree murder on February the 12th of 1990. She made her $250,000 bail, and her father had paid for her bond. Her trial was held at Westchester County Courthouse, and her attorney was David Lewis. We need to get going here. Hold on. Now, I'm going to get more into this. Now, even before the facts were known in detail, the police decided that the case of Caroline Warmus showed that she was up to her old trick of imitating art. Now, within days of her indictment in February of 1990, a year before, the press labeled the prosecution a real live fatal attraction case. and it gets more into, this is getting more into it, so bear with me. Uh, Now, as I said, she did, you know, uh, now, which I thought was kind of interesting in all of this, the private detective Vincent Parco, the one that she got the gun from, when she hired him to trail the married New Jersey bartender, she and Vincent Parco devised the idea of superimposing photographs of Warmus in sexy poses of upon pictures of the bartender, and with the intention of mailing these to his wife. Uh, so he, which I thought was kind of interesting because Vincent Parco had the skill set to do this. He taught his students how to hide a video camera in a purse or a loose leaf notebook, and they were basically kind of became really, really good friends. Now, several years after the bartender incident, Caroline again had the recourse to commit forgery, this time to establish an alibi as a defense to a damage claim. There was a woman that identified herself as Caroline Warmus was involved in an automobile accident. Subsequently, Warmus wrote to the other driver involved, stating that she had been chaperoning a school trip in Washington on the day of the accident, and offered a letter signed by the school official, and which eventually the school official denied that he had written the letter. Now, so basically, it sounds, like I said, it sounds to me like this woman just she's weird. In September, and now I'm getting into this more, I went over the brief outline, sorry. In September of 1987, when she met Paul Simon, of course he was 38, she began teaching at Greenville School in the Edgemont District in Westchester County in New York. She later moved on to Bryam Hills District in nearby Armonk, where she taught computer science, but he remained at Greenville. Betty Jean Solomon, Paul's wife, was an account executive with the Continental Credit Corporation, and she and her husband lived with their daughter Kristen. The marriage bond between the Solomons was apparently not very strong. He admitted to having 2 brief affairs before meeting Caroline, and he also suspected that Betty Jean was having a relationship with her former boss. Several months after their first meeting, they eventually ended up in the affair in her apartment. Doing her best to keep this a secret, she took on the role of a friend of the whole Solomon family, where she showered Kristen with gifts, ended up taking her on a skiing trip. On this excursion, Caroline then confessed to Kristen that that she thought that Betty Jean didn't like her very much, even though Kristen, even though there was this deep down feeling that she knew Kristen knew that she was right, she tried to tell her different. So in 1988, Paul stopped seeing her, and Caroline confided to a friend in Southfield, Michigan, that her relationship was not progressing in the way that she thought it should, or that she was comfortable with. And she then, spoke of a desire to engage a private detective to prove that Paul was cheating on Caroline with his wife. Now, if I'm not making sense, please, feel free to let me know. So now, shortly after midnight on Sunday of January the 15th, 1989, they received a call from Paul Simon, who had returned home and to find his wife murdered. Betty Jean was lying on the living room floor. She had been pistol whipped in the head and had 9 bullet wounds in her back and legs. None of the neighbors had heard the shots. There was no sign of forced entry, and the only indication of a struggle was a disconnected telephone. They photographed a black woolen glove near the corpse. And as I said earlier, at first the investigation was focused on Paul Simon, and after he gave his alibi of being at a bowling alley and then ending up at the Holiday Inn with Caroline Warmus, and they had drinks, and they had hamburgers and some oysters. They went and repaired Caroline's red Hyundai car, and where they ended up having sexual relations. She specified in her statement that she was in the driver's seat when the sexual relations occurred. Now, why she would be that specific about that, I'm not really sure. It doesn't, I don't know what that has to do with anything, and why she was so specific in stating that she was in the driver's seat during that. I don't know. Now, there were witnesses that did come forward to confirm that they had seen him at the bowling alley and later in her company at the Holiday Inn. And of course, as I said earlier, some months later, the police suspicions shifted from Paul Simon to Caroline Warmus. And of course, as the reason being was because of her heightened interest and her relentless pursuit of Paul. June 1989, Paul Simon broke off his relations with Caroline Warmus. She followed him to Puerto Rico, where he was vacationing with a new friend, Barbara Baylor, posing as a police officer. Okay, now, really? She called Baylor's family from the island, urging them to end the romance. Now, again, there wasn't any reason why she would do that, or why she would say, call. In other words, in the conversation, it doesn't tell you what was said in the conversation, if that makes any sense. Then, of course, there was also another development in the investigation, which was a receipt of a tip that in early January of 1989, shortly before the murder, Caroline had purchased from the private eye, her friend, Vincent Procco, a handgun that was equipped with a silencer. So they basically had enough to arrest her with all this information that they were getting. On February the 2nd, 1989, she was indicted for a second-degree murder and the possession of an unregistered firearm. Now, however, 6 months after the indictment was dismissed, on the ground that the state had not disclosed to the grand jury the fact that Vincent Praco had been granted immunity. This was some. See, this is what I didn't know. Okay. He was granted immunity for his agreement to testify about the sale of the pistol to Caroline Warmus. Then they obtained a new indictment, and this is how the Fatal Attraction, how it became labeled the Fatal Attraction title trial. This opened on Thursday, February the 14th of 1991 in Westchester County Courthouse, where headmistress Jean Harris had been convicted of murdering Dr. Herman Tarnauer a decade earlier. Now, the prosecution was headed by District Attorney James McCarty, and David Lewis defended Caroline Warmus. Let's see. Don't need to get into all their thing. Now it goes into how she was dressed. I mean, seriously. Now, in his opening statement, McCarty told the jury that Warmus was driven by a consuming desire to possess Paul Simon. He knew that the evidence was circumstantial, but like pieces of the puzzle would reveal a clear picture of the person that killed Betty Jean Solomon, the defendant, Caroline Warmus. The proof would include testimony from private investigator Vincent Pargo, as well as the telephone company records of a call on the day of the slaying made from the defendant's apartment to a gun shop where she bought the bullets using a false ID that she had stolen from a secretary in an office where Warmus had worked. Now, mind you, the Solomons' marriage had had its ups and downs over the years, and both, husband and wife were having affairs, but they weren't ready to call it quits. In the summer of 1988, after Solomon ended his relationship with Caroline, she wrote him notes, gave his daughter Kristen extravagant gifts, and told her college friend Ryan Atkinson that Paul Simon was the perfect person for her. The only obstacle was Paul Simon's wife, Betty Jean, and the defendant made it clear that she would do anything to get her out of the picture so that she could take her place in the household. Okay, this woman is just totally, yeah. Now, her attorney responded by arguing that the case was not about the impropriety of Warmus's adulterous affair, and that her love for Paul Simon did not demonstrate her guilt. He said that there was no physical evidence. He emphasized to show that Warmus was in the Solomons' home on the night of the killing. Now, of course, her attorney then said that the prosecution was hampered by sloppy police work. Lewis strongly suggested that Paul and the private detective were responsible for the murder and for faking the evidence. Now, also, which I found was interesting, her attorney had limited success in his efforts to weaken her friend's testimony, Ryan Atkinson, and in a telephone conversation, she had asserted that her money and Paul's family, they would have a perfect life. She said that she would take it upon herself to make sure that she ended up with Paul. Several months after the killing, but before her arrest, Caroline spoke to Ryan again. On this occasion, she informed him that Solomon and she were going to end up together and that everything had been taken care of. The other woman was no longer an obstacle. Under cross-examination, Ryan Atkinson conceded that he did not remember Caroline Warmus's exact words, but was relating the essence of what she had told him. Regardless, if that's what she said basically in a nutshell, I would think that would be very incriminating. But then again, I don't know. Now, Kristen, Paul Simon's daughter, testified also. And, Kristen told her account of Caroline's campaign to win her goodwill. He introduced Kristen and to Caroline when he was coaching his daughter. She chatted with Caroline in her classroom, seen her at basketball games, and gone to a Christmas show in Manhattan with her father, Caroline, and another teacher. In 1988, she and her parents had gone out to dinner with Caroline, and the defendant had offered to take her skiing during the winter break. Kristen also told the jury that she gave her birthday gifts that she had received. Now, on her 15th birthday, the prosecutors asserted that Solomon had temporarily broken off the affair. Then Caroline had unexpectedly arrived at the Solomons with 2 outfits and a bracelet for Kristen. Kristen stated, and I'll quote, "I was in shock. I was not frightened, but hesitant because I knew my mom didn't enjoy her in the house, and I was worried there would be words." End quote. And after Betty Jean's death, Caroline left notes on the door, but had not seen Kristen. And then 2 weeks before her 16th birthday, Kristen had arrived home to discover a pale blue Tiffany's box at her doorstep. They contained diamond stud earrings and a note that said, "Love always, Caroline." Is it me, or does this woman just seem like, I don't know how to describe this. This is just something, I'm sorry, it sounds to me like Fatal Attraction, the movie. It's just really, really weird. Now, the prosecution then began to tie Caroline to the murder weapon with the testimony of another private investigator, James Russo. And he swore the defendant had consulted him a few months before the murder to seek protection from a woman named Jean or Betty Jean, who was trying to hurt her family. And then Russo suggested a bodyguard. Caroline stated her preference was she stated that her preference would be a machine gun and a silencer. Apparently, now this wasn't the only time that he spoke with her. She spoke to him on 3 other occasions, and she claimed that her father's jet had been sabotaged. That this same woman had struck her sister's car in Washington in a hit and run. And of course, her attorney then tried to discredit her, which they could not do. Then they went into the murder. There's even kind of a transcript, but I'm going to get into it. This is the actual events of the night of the murder. the operator of the New York Telephone Company, which since is a direct police emergency network, was not established. When they called 911, they were sent to an operator who then referred the messages to the police. So, here's kind of what happened. Shortly before 7:12 on the night of the killing, the witness, Linda Viana Newcomb, received a call from a woman screaming with words that sounded like trying to kill me. On February the 8th, the call was disconnected. She transposed the digits of the number of the telephone. Because of this mistake, she had reported the emergency to the Scarsdale police, who then rerouted the message to Greenboro. They couldn't be specific as to whether or not it said he is trying to kill me or she is trying to kill me. Now, which I've also found interesting. Now, why this was done, I don't know. But on February the 8th, Paul Simon, who had been granted immunity from prosecution. Now, why would he need to be granted immunity? I'm not quite sure. Took the stand to tell the jury about his marriage and how strained it was and his guilt over the affair and his actions on the night of the murder. And apparently they had a conversation where she said that she found it difficult to find good people to date. And he said, I'd be so happy to dance at your wedding and see you happy. And she had asked him, what about your happiness? And he said, if anything happens to Betty Jean and me, I'd never get married anyway. So he then accompanied her car. It goes on and on. I mean, this woman was just, really, really crazy. And as a result, she was found guilty of first degree murder. It's just that this woman just made me really, really, it was weird. Now, in 1993, her attorney filed a motion for a new trial, claiming that 2 pieces of key evidence had been withheld by the prosecution. He asserted that the prosecution knew that Paul Simon had been having an affair with another woman 3 months before his wife was killed, not 4 months after the murder as he had testified. Now, they never really gave that information out. I went back over and read this again. They never really gave a timeline as to when he started dating Barbara Baylor, because it just never went on. Now, mind you, remember the glove that they found in the apartment, in the condo? Apparently, they also found a second glove that the defense claimed the prosecution had not disclosed, that was found outside the apartment building. But even though all these arguments came up, they still, denied the retrial. So she ended up serving 25 years to life. And but again, I just thought, there's a lot of things in this that didn't really make sense. Like, if he was dating this other woman 4 months before this, so forth and so on. Yeah, that could cast reasonable doubt on Betty Jean. But then you got to think about it too. Why would she make all these statements? about, I need a gun with a silencer or a machine gun with a silencer. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It was all weird. And I just thought it was, kind of weird that it's just all one big, I don't even know how to put it, web of whatever. And, yeah. So, that of course, I guess that's how the movie was made. That's what the movie's based on. So, guys, that's it. I hope everyone enjoyed this, and if there's any questions, comments, please feel free to comment below. And even if you have some cases that you would like me to talk about, please feel free to comment below, and I will write them down on my list. And until then, I hope everyone has a great week, and I will see you all next time.